Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Persner, and I am the Director of International Affairs for the Taiwan World Wild Bird Federation. And on behalf of the TWBF and the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute, I would like to welcome everybody to the first in our major topics in international bird conservation webinar series. And so this is a great event that we are hosting based on the publication of the State of Taiwan Birds Report, which came out in 2020. A little bit about the State of Taiwan Birds Report. It was first comprehensive assessment of the conservation status of Taiwan's birds and species and integrates data collected through the long-term science projects and scientific studies. It also touches on a range of topics and offers a comprehensive introduction to the situation facing Taiwan's birds, both positively and negatively. And if you are interested in the report, my colleague is going to put the links for the State of Taiwan Birds in both English and Chinese. So if you have an interest in looking at the report, reading about the report, or have any other, if you're interested in other information, you can find it there. And so we have a wonderful speaker today, Ms. Susan Bonfield from Environment for the Americas. However, before we begin, the president of the TWBF, Dr. Fang Weihong, would like to first say a few words. So, Dr. Fang?
Oh, thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone, or should I say good evening to our honorable speaker from the United States. My name is Weihong Fang, and I'm the president of the Wild Bird Federation, Taiwan. It is with great happiness, and I greet you all and welcome you today as we begin the major topic in bird conservation webinar series. In total, there are 6 webinars, each looking to highlight a specific topic related to birds, their conservation, and what people can do to better protect and celebrate the nature. It is my hope that these webinars can create opportunities for meaningful discussions, not only helping us to better understand the actions and the research outside of Taiwan, but also allowing us to share what is happening here as well. I would also like to welcome today's speaker, Mrs. Susan Bonfield, the CEO of Environment for the Americas. Her organization epitomizes what the meaning of the celebrating birds means, working with partners across sectors on hundreds of events per year for World Migratory Bird Day and the related events. Many, if not all, of the TWBF's partners are engaged in educational and outreach events as well, hosting or holding activities for local communities so they could come together and learn about birds and conservation. We are all very excited to learn from Susan and share our experience with her as well. On behalf of the TWBF, I welcome you and say thank you for joining us today. I look forward to your talk as well as the discussion afterward. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Dr. Fang. Those words were very nice, and I echo those comments. Now, Susan, before I give your introduction, I just wanted to tell everyone watching that if you have any questions for Susan or any questions that you would like to come up during the question and answer session, please put your questions in the question and answer box at the bottom of the webinar chat room here, and those questions will be forwarded to us so you can ask Susan at the end during the question and answer session. Now, a bit more about our speaker today, Susan Bonfield. Susan is the director of the organization Environment for the Americas and has a career spanning over 30 years in education and conservation. She has managed research and educational collaborations across the Western Hemisphere and in Europe, leading multi-organizational research projects and mentoring youth. She holds a master's in natural resources from the University of Michigan and a PhD in human dimensions of Natural Resources from Colorado State University. She is also a founding member of the Diversity Joint Venture, serves on the Society for Conservation Biology's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and is a coordinator for the Tri-National Western Hummingbird Partnership. Today, she will be talking with us about World Migratory Bird Day, the work of the EFTA, and how we can combine celebrating nature and conservation. So without further ado, I will hand the floor over to Susan. Susan, if you would share your screen and your presentation with us. Thank you.
I will. Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you, Dr. Fong. I'm going to say a quick hello before I share my screen. I just want to say that Dr. Fong was so correct. As you are starting your day, we are ending ours here in Colorado in the United States. And it's such a pleasure to be able to join you across the flyways to share a critical piece of bird conservation, which is you. Every person in this planet plays a role in the survival and the protection of our shared migratory birds. And wherever you are and whatever time it is, we invite you to become connected to bird conservation through World Migratory Bird Day. And that's what gives me such a pleasure to talk with you about. I've been working with World Migratory Bird Day for most of my professional career, and it's one of the favorite parts of my work, which is connecting people to conservation. World Migratory Bird Day works to bring us together and to unify our voices for bird conservation. And how do we do that? I think all of you know that a desire to protect birds, a desire to want to help them comes from our own personal feelings about birds. And we work to create those feelings. We work to help people get out into nature, to understand bird behavior, bird ecology, but to understand it in a way that impassions them and brings them to the world of birds. We want to inspire people, whether it's through art, whether it's through science, whether it's through music, however it speaks to you, that is a way to become connected to nature and to migratory birds and thus their protection. Environment for the Americas, as Scott mentioned, is an organization that does not only education and outreach, but we also do research and conservation projects across the Western Hemisphere. We work with diverse groups and cultures, many different languages, and we know that being able to work together across those political boundaries and country boundaries is also critical to our shared protection of migratory birds. Our team is small but mighty, and we have many talents. One of them is the multicultural and multilingual nature of all of our staff. We have staff who are Spanish speakers, traditional Chinese, French, some Portuguese, and English, of course. And we need that because of our work from Canada to Argentina and to the Caribbean. And we want the faces of our staff to reflect the people with whom we work. So we also make sure that our staff are located in the places where we work. So you can see that some of our staff focus on the Caribbean region, while others are focused on South America, Central America, Mexico, the United States, or Canada. We also have some people who hail from farther away, and they're able to help us make new connections, such as the one we've made with the Taiwan Bird Federation and Scott. So what is World Migratory Bird Day, and how can a festival or education programs help to protect birds? Well, I'm going to give you a short video so that we'll provide you with a little bit of background about the program, and then I'll come back and share quite a bit more with you.
World Migratory Bird Day is approaching 30 years old, and it continues to bring new opportunities to learn about birds, the spectacle of migration, and bird conservation. At Environment for the Americas, this single program has sparked many other conservation efforts. Our work in Mexico, the US, and Canada through the Western Hummingbird ensures that we are learning what migratory hummingbirds need to survive throughout their life cycles. New virtual programming has connected us to children across the Western Hemisphere, and our diversity internship programs bring talented young professionals to nature and conservation. In 2021, we celebrated the theme, Sing, Fly, Soar Like a Bird. During this year's event, World Migratory Bird Day will inspire the activity of bird watching, a pastime enjoyed by some 86 million Americans with deeper meaning. It will teach participants at more than 700 locations from Argentina to Canada how to identify birds, how to connect with them, and how to delve deeper into bird biology, investigating such topics as the difference between bird song and call, the mysteries of migration, and the astounding power of flight. Birds are sentinels of our environment and serve as an early warning system to environmental problems that affect not only their populations, but also human health. Birds inspire us with their beauty and diversity, amaze us with their long-distance journeys, and soothe our spirits with their melodies. Today, bird populations are threatened by so many factors. Climate change, free-roaming cats, and collisions are just a few of the hazards that birds encounter. World Migratory Bird Day is a call to action to protect birds across the flyways. Join us by taking part in simple actions that make your yard, your neighborhood, and your community a haven for birds. Come sing, fly, and soar with all of us at Environment for the Americas during World Migratory Bird Day 2021.
So Migratory Bird Day brings together all of the components that any community or any organization needs to motivate bird conservation. One is that we provide the education materials that are used across the Western Hemisphere and now around the world to help provide information about some of the threats to migratory bird populations. We also want to make sure that everybody understands their place in the conservation world, which is that there are so many ways that every individual and every community can help to contribute to migratory bird conservation. And we articulate each of those actions that people can do each year. So when is World Migratory Bird Day? So if you're out there watching and you think you have a guess, when is it? When is Migratory Bird Day celebrated? Well, definitely there are different times across the year, right? So what would be the best time in Taiwan? What would be the best time in the United States? And that's a very big challenge for us. The second Saturday in May, the second Saturday in October, or every day? Well, as we like to say, Migratory Bird Day is every day. You can help birds every day, and we hope that you will. In the Western Hemisphere, however, we have focal times of year that we celebrate the event. The second Saturday in May celebrates the northward migration of birds. So birds coming from non-breeding grounds in South America, Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean as they head to the United States and Canada to nest. And then again, we celebrate it in October officially so that we can celebrate the southward migration. So right now we are in the southward migration, and our events in Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean have mostly just concluded, although we have some going into December. World Migratory Bird Day, though, has grown to be a global event. And though it started in the Western Hemisphere, it's now around the world. And in fact, that is the reason for its name change from International Migratory Bird Day to World Migratory Bird Day. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But as you can see, these are some flyways that have been identified globally. They aren't actually biological flyways, but rather political flyways. And what that means is that we understand that the countries in these flyways are the ones who must work together in order to help these species. That doesn't mean that there isn't overlap between these flyways. And as we see, for those of you who are in Taiwan or other parts of the world, we certainly do have overlap outside of the Americas. However, this is the way the flyways have been set up to help motivate conversations among countries. Our partners to the east are the Convention on Migratory Species, which is a United Nations program, and the African Eurasian Flyway, and other organizations that we also work with in other parts of the world. There are multiple websites as a result, so you should make sure that you look for those websites where you might live. The Convention on Migratory Species and the Agreement on the Conservation of Water Birds also have websites where they provide information. So ours is one, but there are more out there. Our partners at the United Nations Environment Program host the global map. So if you want to go on and look at what kinds of events and activities are going on each year or across the years of the program, you can take a look at this map. Clicking on the dots will find more information and provide you with details about the activities and what's going on. So as you can see, even during a pandemic, we've managed to host so many activities around the globe, some of them virtual, some of them in person, but all of them have been phenomenal, just like this activity tonight. And so how can you participate? What I'm going to do is I'm going to first give you a little bit of history so that you understand how the program is organized and you get a feeling for what's available to you. One thing that we have done every year is to add new and wonderful materials that can be used, especially around the world, which have not been available before. And for the first time this year, we've had a poster for each main partner, for the global poster, for the East Asian Australasian Flyway, and then, of course, for the African Eurasian Flyway. Our artist this year is Sarah Woolman. She is from Alaska. And she did an amazing job creating a piece for each flyway, which is the first time we've ever done this. Just to tell you a little bit more about the posters, we also try to produce them in as many languages as we can. Because we're from the Americas, we're not so good at doing many languages that are outside of our part of the world. And we know that we only have a few of the languages that are represented in the world. In fact, as the coordinators of the Americas Flyway, we have it so much easier than the rest of the world because we don't have as many languages as are spoken elsewhere. But we really appreciate the East Asian Australasian Flyway for the amazing work they've done, translating the annual poster into all of these languages and making them downloadable. So you can go to this website if you're in any of these parts of the world and need the information in this language, and you can download that poster with that language on it. So it's been a great resource, and thanks so much to them for making that available to everyone. So where did Migratory Bird Day come from? Well, back in 1993, a group in the United States called Partners in Flight joined together. And it was the first time that there was a recognition that threats to migratory birds happen not only on the breeding grounds, but also on non-nesting sites and on the places where birds stop to rest and refuel. And that group, Partners in Flight, got together and they started producing a lot of scientific information. And as a result, some of the headline news in the United States was very dramatic. And it said, even back in 1993, the sounds of songbirds in the forests are silenced. And this, for the general public, is a very difficult concept. It's very dramatic, and it doesn't create a feeling that you can help the issue. And please remember that this was back in 1993. Recognizing that the general public might not understand these science messages and might not have much knowledge about migratory birds, which is such a phenomenon, they created the program, which was then called International Migratory Bird Day. And it serves as a bridge between the science and the public to help raise awareness of migratory birds, their phenomenal and spectacular flights, and what we can do to protect them. Art has always been a central piece of Migratory Bird Day, and every year since that time, there has been a unique piece of art that has represented the event. So as you can see, in 1998 and 1999, there were very general posters celebrating our love for birds. It wasn't until 2000, 2001, and currently that we began to introduce a focused conservation theme. And we felt that that was important because we felt that at the same time that we wanted to create that connection to migratory birds, we also wanted to provide some very direct science information and messaging about conservation and what factors threaten migratory birds as they travel. So each year we have recruited a different artist. They come from all parts of the Western Hemisphere. We've recruited artists from Haiti, from Mexico, from Canada, from Argentina, and they've all produced posters that have talked about topics such as colonial nesting birds, collisions, the importance of the boreal forest, also habitat from tundra to tropics, the importance of culture to birds, the power of partnerships in bird conservation and how we must work together to make bird conservation effective, and how everyone can go wild while going birding and also protect birds. We've gone on to talk about the life cycle of birds, why birds matter, again, another habitat theme, the power of flight and spreading your wings for bird conservation. We've done plastic, and we've done, and more recently, how birds connect our world, and looking at how we track birds to follow them and learn more about their migrations. And then, of course, this year, Seeing Fly Soar Like a Bird, which was a pandemic-induced theme, something recognizing that while we're all sequestered in our homes, there are still ways that we can join in our pleasure for birds. And 2022, I'm going to leave to the very end. I'll share that with you for those of you who are with us at the very end of this presentation. That'll be your prize. And so what I want to share with you right now is just a fun piece for you. This year, at the same time that we encouraged people to get out and conserve birds, we had to recognize that a lot of us have not been able to work as a group. We haven't been able to get outdoors and do things together. And so we also wanted to create a sense of freedom with this theme and to raise awareness again of the importance of bird song and bird flight to their migrations and how birds do this. So just for some fun, and I'm going to share these little bits and pieces along the way, we had groups participate with their own versions of song and costume.
Arriba de aquel árbol, una tremenda laraca, y ese canto sustancioso de una linda guacharaca, que sea para bien. Que sea para bien. ¿Dónde está la guacharaca? ¿Dónde está que no la veo? ¿Dónde está la guacharaca? ¿Dónde está que no la veo? La guacharaca, la guacharaca. La guacharaca, la guacharaca. Ella está en tu casita.
So thanks for taking that journey to Latin America. One of, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the important components of Migratory Bird Day is recognizing the importance of culture in migratory bird conservation. And for many of our partners and for us as well, parts of our culture that sing about birds, that recognize birds, are one of the ways that we can impassion people to get involved in bird conservation. And so this little song about a Colombian species, the chachalaca, talking about the song of the bird and its beauty. And so, you know, we had so many wonderful activities this year, and that was just one. And we know that it brings people closer to the birds of their communities. So back to that bird conservation theme. One of the first conservation themes, as I mentioned, was focused on the peregrine falcon. And of course, this is a species that, at least in the United States, caused it to become listed on our endangered species list because of the use of DDT, a chemical that caused its eggs to weaken and its populations to plummet. Fortunately, researchers and other people raised the alarm, recognizing the sharp decline in the species and other species as well. DDT was banned in the United States as a result, and now this species is listed as stable, and its populations have grown. It has been removed from the endangered species list. And so it was a success story that we wanted to announce and to share then across the Americas. Another theme is the mystery of the missing migrants, with art by Charlie Harper. And in this iconic piece, it shows the migration of birds during the night. And as many of you may know, a lot of birds migrate at night. Not all birds, but a lot of birds, and especially the songbirds, migrate at night. Scientists think that it's to avoid predation and to be safer. But night migration has its own challenges. And we recognize that a lot of these small birds are hard to study, and it's hard to track what's happening with their populations. Studies since that time have been used to track them through radar, through satellite, through other methods, through banding. And so we've learned a lot more about where they go at night and where they stop and what they need and what their connections are and how we're connected in their journeys all along the way. But this art, included so many different species of birds, all of them, again, night migrants. And you can see that if you're a bird watcher and you know some of your birds from the Western Hemisphere, even though this is very simple art, it's also detailed enough that you can identify every species on the poster. Shade coffee, another issue, the growing number of coffee shops, and I don't know how that is in other parts of the world, but I know in the Americas, coffee has grown in popularity. And at the same time, the coffee business has been a problem for migratory birds. So growing shade coffee as a traditional crop where trees are left to grow above the coffee is the preferred method. And that's because it provides birds with a structure, with a place where they can be and go as they spend their time on the non-breeding grounds. Sometimes we're a little ahead of ourselves. And in 2007, we launched the theme on climate change, and the public wasn't quite ready for it. Climate change was just growing in concern among the general public, although scientists had long been talking about climate change and its impacts. But we decided to go ahead with the theme, and it's a tough topic, as we know, but we did launch it then. It's probably one that might be brought forth again in the future. And plastics, again, because of Migratory Bird Day, this was one of the first times that plastics had been brought to light as a threat to migratory birds. Typically, you might think of plastics as having an impact on turtles and species in the oceans. But they do have a great impact on migratory birds. And as you can see from the photo on the lower left, birds can become entangled in plastics. They also eat plastics and often die with a stomach full of plastics. In the year of our plastic theme, we hosted so many plastic pollution cleanups across the Americas and in other parts of the world, and those continue today. So even though a theme is not continued through the art or through the focal activity or messaging, it doesn't mean that we discourage people from continuing to promote those activities and to offer them at their sites. So we continue to encourage reducing plastic use and hosting plastic pollution cleanups. We also want to emphasize that World Migratory Bird Day gives every organization a venue for raising awareness about the threats to birds in their area. All of the topics are personalizable. You can present them at your organization, your school, your community, and this is the time when everybody comes together to do that. Over World Migratory Bird Day, focal days in October and May, we reach millions of people through our outreach and social media and other messaging. And at the same time, millions of people are seeing those messages all at one time. And we feel like that raises the impact. For many groups, it's a time when they focus on making their big statement about migratory birds. It's a time when they might announce the protection of new land, or when they announce a new threat or a decline in populations. So it's used broadly to help people raise awareness of migratory birds and the need for their conservation. And about our artists and the species again, the artists are critical to this program, and they are, of course, usually people who are also passionate about birds and bird conservation. But they also have to present these birds and prepare the art for use in so many different materials. So their work takes quite a bit of time, and I want to say that we appreciate all of them. And, you know, sharing that information about migration. This is the Bartailed Godwit. This is one of those species that connects us to you. This is a species that nests in the far reaches of the United States up in Alaska, and it makes the longest nonstop migration to sites as far away as New Zealand and Australia, and then also is found over in Asia as well before it heads back to the tundra. So these species, you know, flying such large distances, they need the protection that we can provide them from all of our countries and from all of you. So knowing about them and knowing about their journeys and when they come and how you can help is critical. The leading cause of decline in the Bartailed Godwit is human activity. And all of our actions have impacted this bird to the point that it is considered a near threatened species. So this is a species that a lot of work is going into now to help protect it, whether it is to conserve its stopover sites and the beaches it needs for foraging, or to conserving its nesting sites. And indeed, birds do connect our world. We also create education materials that can be used in classrooms and other locations. So Birds Connect Our World, for example, we created a folder that taught about migration and some of the ways that we can track migrating birds, whether using weather radar, geolocators, satellite receivers, or how you can participate as a citizen scientist in helping to track migratory birds. All of our education materials are interactive. We do online trainings for new teachers and new educators who want to get involved, and we're looking to expand those. Those are provided in English and Spanish as well. And with the new opportunity to translate by Zoom, as we're learning, we have the opportunity to offer these even more broadly. And I'm going to cut you to another opportunity to see another group at work. So because of Scott's great collaboration and because of our staff person, Chu Yu, who is also from Taiwan, we've been able to make great connections in Taiwan. In 2021, again, our artist was Sarah Woolman, and I think that her work really helps to inspire and share the beauty of migratory birds and what it means. If you haven't had the opportunity to travel outside of where you live, to travel to one of the places at the farthest northern reaches of where migratory birds nest, Sarah provides us with a look at what that's like. And so I'm going to share with you a piece of her world, which is Alaska, and what she sees during the year.
In my memory from the north slope of Arctic Refuge, a place so full of life and a place so desolate, a place of hope for the future and a place of change. Join me as we celebrate the end of one season and the beginning of another. Look at those birds and feel their freedom and flight and their connection to this earth and its people, and embrace the hope, joy, and song they all bring.
It's a dramatic landscape where Sarah lives. And you can imagine that today, which was such an interesting thing, is that Sarah talked about the migration of the Sandhill Cranes coming over. Well, they just came over my house today in our office. And so I had the opportunity to hear them fly over our skies. So it's a bird that is shared over a broad distance. And you know, it so needs the habitats where it can stop to feed, which are agricultural fields and places by water where it gathers in the hundreds and thousands. It's truly an amazing sight to see sandhill cranes. But this year, our theme did serve as a call to action, and our species are all chosen with care. So every year, these species aren't randomly chosen. So if you were to ask us about any of these species on any of the posters, they were picked because of their scientific relationship to the message. So in this poster, for example, we chose species that gave different aspects of flight or song. And the turkey vulture, for example, is a bird that soars, and you won't see it flapping its wings much. Whereas the sandhill crane, it soars also, but flaps a bit more, flies long distances, and has, well, not so much of a song. We picked some birds that are little songsters, like the yellow warbler, which has a beautiful song, or one of the most beautiful songs, which is the wood thrush. We also make sure that all of these species represent birds across the Western Hemisphere. So for example, we need to have birds that are seen in South America as well as the Caribbean. And each species represents different regions, making sure that we have a connection to all of the people with whom we work. When we made the posters for the other flyways, we did the same thing. We selected species that migrated across the flyway and represented the message that we wanted to share this year. So again, and then we want to make sure that we have birds that represent the different groups. So if you think about birds, we have songbirds, we have raptors, owls, ducks, shorebirds, seabirds. And we work to include as many of those as possible so that we can work with all of those groups who focus their conservation efforts on these different groups of birds. So you'll see in here that we do have a duck, a songbird, a shorebird, couple of shorebirds, some other types of passerines, a hummingbird, which is only found in the eastern United States, but other species that are found more in the western United States, and then also migrate to Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean, spending their winters there, and in fact, perhaps even more time there than they do in the United States or Canada. So each species on every poster is very carefully chosen. And again, as we've mentioned, the education resources, and then all of the organizations that we work with. So we love working with organizations. We have contacts with over 700 groups across the Americas who participate either every year or every other year or when they can. Of course, we had groups that could not participate during the last year because of the pandemic, but we're excited to look forward to 2022 when we can get back on the ground with everyone. And so what does it look like on the ground? What does a Migratory Bird Day program look like? Some things are day-long activities or classroom activities. They might be at museums or at zoos. They can be indoors or outdoors. The beauty of Migratory Bird Day is that you can do it pretty much anywhere. We have had libraries participate, colleges, elementary schools, zoos, as I mentioned, nonprofit organizations, aquaria, so many different kinds of groups with so many creative ideas. But again, we have our basic messages. One is we want to connect people to nature and birds. We want you to experience birds as close as you can, whether it's through hands-on activities or actually getting outdoors to see them. We want to make people aware of conservation and actions they can take to protect birds. We want to impassion people. We want them to explore birds and to feel the thrill of birds and bird migration. And we do that, again, through art and music, through community and outdoor experiences. This year, we had quite a bit of fun with some new activities. We had a costume party. So for children who couldn't go to school but were at home, they had a great time learning about the bird species and creating some really amazing costumes, which they shared with us this year. So if you don't know what these are, if you can't identify them by the costume, this is one of our winning costumes, which is the Upland Sandpiper. This beautiful costumes, which came from, on the right, a indigenous community in Colombia. And I can't remember our left one, but these are yellow warblers. And these beautiful costumes, which represented the belted kingfisher and are so incredibly creative. So the belted kingfisher is a fish eater, only eats fish. And so you can see that fish that is caught in the beak of the left bird. One of our requirements is that you are not allowed to buy materials to make your costumes. You had to use recycled items. So a lot of these items are made from paper, from cut up milk containers. The fish is from a water bottle or some sort of juice bottle or whatever. So everything had to be made from hand and not buying anything, especially something not recyclable. And of course, this one was a favorite, and we love the graduation cap on the bird on the left. This is the Turkey Vulture. And as you know, turkey vultures are doing well in the United States and other parts of the Western Hemisphere, but they're in steep decline in other parts of the world. So definitely a species that needs conservation and protection in other parts of the world. And for this wonderful species, which is the streaked flycatcher of South America, we also include some species that don't migrate all the way to North America, but rather have a migration between the southern parts of South America and its more northern locations, and the royal tern, which is a seabird. We also hosted a bird concert to get people together online through song. And I want to share one of the songs that we had this year, which was about, and we asked that they focus the song hopefully on some of the birds of the poster. So this one focused on a duck.
Soy un gato lindo, verde y elegante. No quiero mirar, es muy intimidante. Mis hermanos están emprendiendo vuelo, pero yo me voy a quedar con mi abuelo. Ni volando en banda estoy a salvo. Hay peligros y amenazas por todos lados. Los edificios tan grandes me dan miedo. Y es que se parecen al azul del cielo. ¿Qué pasará si no veo bien un vidrio? O si en una rama pierdo el equilibrio. Pero ya se está acabando la comida y solo me he encontrado una mascarilla. Creo que se acerca la hora de migrar. Gato chico, sabes volar. Gato chico, tú podrás migrar. Gato chico, mira tu destino, vas a alcanzar. Es mi especie, puedes tú buscarme. Somos versátiles, voladores casi inagotables. Aunque tengo miedo, debo ser valiente. Así poder mantener mi especie. Debo confiar en mí que puedo lograrlo. Debo intentarlo, llegaré muy alto. Desde de aquí dependerá mi vida. Sobrevivir y tener una familia. Y el siguiente año todo se repetirá. Chico, sabes volar, gato chico, tú podrás mirar.
So even in a very cute and creative video, we can teach so much about migratory birds. And if you think back to what you saw in this video, you saw cold weather arriving, such as this duck in an ice cube. But you also saw the buildings, which are a big threat to migratory birds, especially when they are attracted to light and when they can't see pane glass windows. You also saw something that's a new threat to birds, which are the masks that we've been wearing for the last year and a half or more, and the impact that they can have on birds if they become entangled in the mask or think it's food and even try to eat it. So what else did we find in that video? If you can think back to it, one was food and the availability of food, the availability of habitat. And so this song, even if you don't speak Spanish, through its visuals and its beautiful music, teaches you so much about migratory birds and the threats they face. I'll share one more song and then we'll start to wrap up, Scott. And I don't know how the translation is going on any Spanish part of this one, but this one's actually an English one, and this one gets back to the Sandhill Crane. As I mentioned, the Sandhill Crane is a species that migrates, and again, just passed over where we're located. It is a species that is probably not, it's not a threatened species or anything like that, but it is a species that migrates long distances, and it migrates in big flocks. So it does need certain habitats to survive. It's a beautiful bird, and I hope you enjoy this vision of it on its journey.
Ice is melting on the Platte River. Winter gives its ghost to the spring. On winds they travel, summoned by the thousand. The endless familiar, ancient dream. Hear cranes calling as they rise from the river, beckoned by the sun's blaze of a new day. A journey and a promise, a dance for eternity. Let's hear the calling and find our way. Waves of pepper skies rise up and rain down. Chaos and calm carried on their wings. Ribbons of wonder, wild clamor to plunder. The possibilities of the spring.
Jane Moore's beautiful song shows the biology and the full life cycle of the migratory sandhill crane. And so what you are seeing there are all the birds coming through, stopping at stopover sites where they gather by, again, the thousands before they take off again. So every night they come in, they rest, they feed, they recover, and then they take off the next day, flying farther south or north, depending on the direction that they go in. So the migration is truly spectacular because it's one of the birds that migrates in such large groups that you can, just to see them is amazing. So I hope everyone's gotten to see cranes in their part of the world. And if not, take the opportunity to do it. It's truly inspirational. I want to take a minute before we wrap up, and I want to thank the Minchung Elementary School from Pindang. Thank you so much for your participation in World Migratory Bird Day. I hope you're listening tonight, and thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. And I think that we have you live as well. So it's fun to be able to go to all parts of the world and to have that connection. I hope that as we wrap up tonight and you'll ask any questions that you might have, that you'll take the opportunity to learn more about World Migratory Bird Day and Environment for the Americas. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight. And again, I want to thank Scott Persner and Dr. Fong for inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to meet you across so many miles. I also want to give a big shout out to our staff member, Chu Yu Lin, for her work and help with the program tonight. Many appreciations to you. I couldn't have done it without you. And again, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful evening, and I look forward to any questions.
Okay, thank you so much for that talk, Susan. If you want, you can unshare your screen now. And so, yeah, that was really fascinating. And I remember when we had first talked because of Chu back in 2019, I think it was, or 2020. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 2019 we started. And I had the pleasure of taking part on behalf of TWBF in the World Migratory Bird Day events that were held on a few different occasions. Although the most memorable was when the students from Minchung Elementary School asked me questions, both Lily and Eddie. Ask great questions. One is, why can some birds fly and some can't? And the other is, why is bird poop white? Yeah. And, and it was
questions really, that have to be asked.
Yeah. And you are absolutely right. The students at Minchung are watching today from Pingdong with their teacher, Mr. Lin.
Oh, great.
And so they all send their greetings as well. And so, hey, everybody down there at Minchung Elementary School. Hey,
yeah. I can't say that, but hello.
It's okay. Hello is international language there.
Okay.
Yep. And so now, moving along in the webinar here, we are going to have a discussion section. So we are very, very fortunate today to have two wonderful guest speakers to go ahead and join us in the discussion. The first is the TWBF president, Dr. Fang Wei Hong, and so you've seen Dr. Fang earlier, and the other is the president of the Raptor Research Group of Taiwan, which his name is Dr. Lin Semin. And so, Dr. Lin, are you there? If you are, could you please turn on your camera now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hello. Yes, very good. And so during the discussion period, I was hoping that the way that this could work is that if either you or Dr. Fang have a question for Susan, you can raise your hand, and then I can call on you, and then I can just relate or tell Susan to answer. And then if Susan has a response, or if she has a question back for you, then I will go ahead and relay it. That way, nobody ends up talking over anybody else, which I've seen to be a problem sometimes in webinars, and I think Susan understands this from her events. So in this case, if either of you would like to get the ball rolling, please feel free. Oh, and also just to let everybody watching know, if you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and post it in the question and answer box, and it will be translated into Chinese, into English, and then I will ask Susan during the question and answer portion. Okay, so thanks again for that. And so, all right, let us get started with the discussion session. So do either of you first have a question or a comment for Susan and her presentation? Oh, I think you are on mute, Dr. Lin. Yeah. No, I think you are still muted.
I saw a question previous posted. Is that under translation?
Yes, that has been already translated. That is fine.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
It's related to the solar power.
Yeah. Oh, that will be in the question and answer session. That will be in the question and answer session, Dr. Fung.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I will start the conversation, the discussion with Susan here. So, Susan, just out of curiosity, could you just tell us how, because you are not only the director, but you're also the founder of Environment for the Americas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How did that start? How did this begin? I'm kind of curious.
Well, this is funny, Scott. My career really does kind of is based on Migratory Bird Day. It's interesting. I never thought that would be the case, but it is. So I had been working at a bird observatory in Colorado, and I had been helping with International Migratory Bird Day in the mid-1990s, and gotten to know the organization that was running the program. In 1999, in a conversation, they said, "Oh, we're going to quit doing the program." And I said, "What? Why?" And they said, "Well, it's just a lot of work. And it's not our main job. It's not what we're supposed to be doing." So this was a foundation that was a grant-giving organization, and they were finding themselves in the position of running a program, which is not, as you know, what a grant-giving organization typically does.
Yeah.
So I said, "You know what? I want to do it." So they said, "Oh, well, okay, let's talk about it." So we did. So in 2000, the year we first started doing the conservation-focused type of program, I started coordinating the program, and I was on staff with them. By 2005, the program had grown so much, they said, "You know what? We can't have you working for us on this program anymore. You need to do something with it. You need to give it away or do something else with it." And I said, "I don't give it away. I don't know. I don't want to give it away." So actually, Environment for the Americas was founded to be the home of what was then called International Migratory Bird Day. And International Migratory Bird Day has led to all of our other programs. It really is the hub of our organization. It's led to our diversity education and internship programs. It's led to our work internationally. So it's really been key to Environment for the Americas.
Wow. Okay. No, that's pretty fascinating, because when I first learned about the organization, I was kind of unclear, because I know that World Migratory Bird Day is done by the United Nations Environment Program, but that they also work with your organization in order to coordinate the theme as well as the events that will take place in the Americas. Is that kind of correct?
Well, so as the history goes, in 2000 and the year of climate change, if you look at that poster carefully, you'll notice that there are European species on it.
Okay.
During that year, we had a call from Germany, and they said, "Hey, we love your program, and we think we want to do something like that." So we said, "Great, let's do it." So we kind of started a loose collaboration during that year, but that was after International Migratory Bird Day had been in place for over a decade. So they kind of started running a parallel program, and we found that we were starting to overlap in messages, and it was confusing for people. So almost 3 years ago, we got together and we created an agreement, which we signed and decided to come together. We put it to the public what they wanted the name of the program to be, so we would only have one name. We did a Western Hemispheric vote to see what people wanted. Yeah, and they chose to change the name from International Migratory Bird Day to World Migratory Bird Day. So we did. So that's how the collaboration came up, and how the collaborative global program was launched.
Wow, no, that's very, very fascinating, because here in Taiwan, we also do have of many events for migratory bird species. Both Dr. Fung and Dr. Lin could probably tell you about things that go on in their respective organizations regarding it. Dr. Lin actually has a comment. Yes?
Oh, actually, I'm not a comment, but I'm curious about the fund resource of your organization, because as a medium to small size non-government organization, we are always anxious about the next year money, and we want. Previously, we got most of the fund from the government, but in recent years, we starting to get sponsors from the public, but it's just a starting. We only about 30% fund from the public, but still a majority of the fund is from the government. So we are always anxious about the next year money. And how do you solve this problem?
Well, that is, I think, every nonprofit's problem, right? is the funding sources. I want to say that thanks so much to our funders who've been in place really since the program launched. Migratory Bird Day is actually part of some of the agreements with some of our federal agencies to provide education about migratory birds and their conservation. And so we are very funded by federal agencies as well. So the U.S. Forest Service international programs, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bureau of Land Management, sometimes the Department of Defense, National Park Service. These are organizations that seek to protect land and the wildlife that depends on it. And so events and programs like World Migratory Bird Day are a benefit to them. So that's one of the reasons why they do support it. And they've been great sponsors. And so again, many, many thanks to them. We also seek other non-federal funding, and we get different fundings through the conservation theme, which might be a way to think about it. So, for example, during the year of plastic pollution, we reached out to conservation groups and other agencies that focus on reducing plastic pollution, such as NOAA, which provided us with some additional funding that year to help us with that theme. So using that message also to help promote activities that benefits other organizations is another way to do that. Optics for the Tropics has also been a long-term sponsor of ours, and this is a group that is concerned with conservation of tropical species, including migratory species that depend on the tropics. And every year, I also write grants and proposals for grants that help to support the program. So depending on the theme, I might reach out to, certain different organizations to request funding for that topic. So using the theme in that way can be a good way to get funding for your activities.
Oh, Dr. Fung?
I just want to share some of our experience about the awareness for the protection of the migratory species. I think that our activity in Taiwan, that back to 1980s, that is the time we beginning running that the Weber societies. For example, that the Weber Society of Taipei, that's run annually for the migratory birds days or migratory bird seasons. For specific weekends, we will hold activity in Guandu Nature Park. At that time, still not the nature park, still that the private owned lands. And we promote that and become a nature park, and eventually become that the first that the NGO runs a nature park. That's although that is owned by the government, but run by the NGO, and it's very successful. And also that I think also starting in the 1980s that in Kending National Park, there's always have annual hawk watching activities. And all those are for the awareness for the bird conservation. And in early days that we still have a big problem for the hunting of the raptors. But I think that for the years, a lot of education and awareness work and the help quite a lot. But I really admire that your organization that can make quite attention internationally about the conservation work of the bird species. That's it's quite inspiring of your talk, and I think that we may learn something from you and starting to more of the reach out work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Fong. And I want to comment that we, with your activities and events from the 1980s, we definitely recognize that we didn't invent the bird festival or the bird activity. I think what we've brought to the bird world and bird events is the connections. So recognizing that one hawk watch here or there is connected across the miles. And so that's the sense that we want to create. When we go to our sites and do surveys at events and ask the general public about migration, most of our public is not an experienced birder. So one thing I love about Migratory Bird Day is it's not an event where you have to know about birds. It's an event that invites you to come learn about birds. And most of our participants do not know much about migration, did not know that birds migrate so far, had no clue about those distances or where they go or what they need. And so that's what we really love is also adding that educational component to the programs, which, I'm sure they have already too, but that connectedness.
Ooh. I just raised my hand physically. Sorry, but no. Wait, first, wait before I speak. Dr. Lin, did you have a comment or a question?
Yes. Previously, Dr. Fang just mentioned about the Raptor survey in the southern tip of Taiwan, and we are glad to share that the population trend of two major species of raptors are increasing in recent years since some illegal hunting was seized in Taiwan, in the Philippines, and also in Japan. And I think this was also contributed by some international collaborations, and in a certain migratory season of these raptors, we have some festivals to celebrate and to have some activities to call for the conservation and protection of these raptors. So I think this has some help to the, currently we are not sure about the major reason, but somewhat and somehow this help to protect the population of these two major raptors. And I think most of these are contributed by international collaborations. Yeah, so I admire Susan and your organization for the work for international collaboration, because this call for the awareness of the publics. Yes, that's a great job.
Well, and I agree with you. I think the raptor groups do a great job working internationally for the protection of migratory raptors. We work with some raptor groups, Hawk Mountain and others, for example, especially to help provide information about migratory raptors and to get science information from them when we need information about them. But yes, they've been wonderful in terms of working with other raptor groups. And, we have contact with groups all down. In fact, a partner from Panama just sent a video of raptors streaming through Panama, which, is quite a migration. The River of Raptors in Veracruz. Yes, also just an amazing part of the flyway. So yes, I think that's important.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really fascinating. And actually, Susan, if you have interest and if you go on Facebook, you could see the Raptor Research Group of Taiwan. They do a really great job of trying to connect people with the topic of raptor migration, for the fact that they do all kinds of things like art, cartoons. They even had a raptor cam actually this summer in one of the two raptor camps, but the one was just in the local parks that people could watch a baby goshawk growing up.
Oh.
And so it was really, really great being able to see these kinds of things. And so it really led to awareness. And like you said, reaching out, because not all people are, are professionals in terms of bird watching or in terms of knowledge or know about these topics. And, from our end, many of our partners, so like Dr. Fang was mentioning, if it's in Taipei every year, they host Taiwan's largest migratory bird festival, the Taipei International Birdwatching Fair, where usually, I think the first time there was over 100,000 people that came way back in the early 2000s. And now it's usually over 10,000 people that will come.
My gosh.
And they just have celebrations and have dances and singing and artwork as well. And these kinds of things are the most important, because getting everybody involved, and especially engaging in education for youth, is really important. But this is where I wanted to ask you, how did you end up making these connections with these different levels in order to be able to spread a message that you need different ways of talking to people in order to go ahead and connect with them? So, I mean, you have universities and you have elementary schools, and then you have local people. How has your organization worked in order to be able to facilitate these kinds of relationships? It's because I'm really fascinated about that.
Yeah, well, the best way we do that is by making sure that our organization reflects those parts of the world. So we don't pretend to be able to understand all of the cultural nuances of another country, or to be able to speak the language, or to know the history, or the how people connect to nature in those countries. And it's very different in different places. How we perceive nature and birds is different. Right. Our staff are based where they work, and they are native to those areas. So our staff, Daniela Sosa in Mexico, is from Mexico. She can speak to the people in Mexico. I can't, or at least not as well. And Miguel Mata, who is in charge of our Latin American programs, is based in Venezuela. He coordinates our team, and he works in South America. Leticia lives in El Salvador, and she works with Central America. She understands Central America. She can go into the communities, going into the communities and being there and meeting people as the coordinator of the program also has a big impact. Laura in Trinidad works in the Caribbean region, and so she can work across the islands, in a culturally and linguistically appropriate way. And I think that's critical, is that this is a program that we bring to everyone from our places, not from one place. Yeah,
so you must be masters of Zoom right now. In terms of
we do appreciate Zoom.
And so, Dr. Fang, Dr. Lin, do you have any more questions or comments for Susan?
I'm okay now.
Okay. All right, very good. Oh yeah, and Susan, you did also mention that you work with eBird, right? That you've worked in terms of doing citizen science. Could you tell us a little bit more? Because actually, that's something that TWBF we do a lot, is eBird promotion, and also trying to teach local communities about how to use eBird in order to become citizen scientists. And so, Taiwan is number 7 in the world for eBird checklists.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Yeah, we do also teach eBird where we can. So we always include it in educator trainings, for example, so that we can teach the educators about eBird. We teach it, for example, in locations where people can use it. We do have a lot of locations where they can't use it. Cell phones might not be available. The data is not available on the cell phone. And, some people aren't quite there yet. Like I mentioned before, a lot of our participants probably aren't ready to use eBird. They're just learning to identify birds. So a group leader might take them out and use eBird and put the eBird list in. We also have an eBird account that's for Migratory Bird Day. So if anybody wants to put their lists in, so we use it where it's appropriate. But we also just enjoy being at that beginner level to get people introduced to the world of birding, and then hopefully send them on to eBird as they're ready.
No, that's absolutely Correct. And I mean, one of the things, just like, what was it, last week or so, my Secretary General Allen, he had gone to one of our partner organizations in Taidong, the Wild Bird Society of Taidong, and they hosted eBird and Merlin, because Merlin bird identification app. We're trying to go ahead and we've done the Taiwan pack. And so trying to go ahead and share with people how to do it, because knowing which bird you're looking at is a very, very important factor.
Right. Well, and those are such great tools. I mean, I use them all the time personally. So they're such great tools. And yes, we do share them.
And so, Dr. Lin, did you have something else that you wanted to add? Another comment or question?
Not really, but actually, I think it's a progress for the social media or social groups such like Facebook, because in previous 20 or 30 years, when we watched the migratory bird, we were alone, only a few people standing beside the beach, and the birds very, very lonely. But in recent years, if anyone sees something flying, they post this news on Facebook, certainly, and then others can go to the similar place or on the same road. You know that Taiwan is a small island, so when somebody sees something in the northern Taiwan, somebody else could follow this bird in the central or southern Taiwan in the second morning. So that is a very, very interesting situation, that people are more closely related and more gathering because of this internet relationships. So it's very, very funny experience to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, for example, watching the heat maps that are produced through eBird are great to show the movement of migratory birds, so people understand how they are moving around the world.
Yeah, like a wave, right? A wave.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And people are doing the records and post on the internet.
Yes. We've also used other citizen science applications depending on the conservation theme. So during the plastic pollution theme, we partnered with Ocean Conservancy, and we encouraged people to submit their plastic pollution data on the Ocean Conservancy global map. And that's a big event also, so shows where people are contributing their conservation actions, and we love that. We've also used Animal Tracker, which shows the movements of birds that have geolocators on them. So it's fun to use some of the different programs. And I didn't give you the big news at the end, which is that our theme for 2022.
Yeah, you didn't mention this. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm sorry. I got, anyway, it was an hour. I forgot what I said at the beginning. So in 2022, our theme will be light pollution, and this is a theme that is, an important theme around the globe. So one of the things we'll be looking at is some of the citizen science projects that help gather information about light pollution and its impacts on migratory birds.
Oh, no, that's a very, very good topic. And definitely one which Taiwan is a very densely populated country with many people living in a very small area. There's a lot of lights which come on at night. Mm-hmm. So it'll be very interesting to see the materials and things that come out. And we hope that, at least from TWBF, us and some our partners can join in the World Migratory Bird Day celebrations with you all again.
Yeah, I hope so too. We'll definitely be in touch with you.
Oh, and also just to let you know, the Minxiang Elementary School is in Pingdong, and where the migratory raptor point in Kending, that's also in Pingdong. So it's all in the same. It's all in the same county there.
Yeah, wow! Oh, that's great. So that school, I hope, is getting out to see raptor migration.
Well, hopefully one day you'll be able to come to Taiwan, and we'll be able to take you.
I hope so too, Scott.
I'll welcome you.
Yeah, more than welcome.
Thank you, and you're welcome to come here. We invite you to come visit us as well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, Dr. Pang, Dr. Lin, if you don't have any more questions or comments for Susan, I guess that we will move on to the question and answer section for now. Yeah? Okay. Very good. Okay. So, Susan, we have a few questions for you. The first one, do not worry about having to read that question. I am going to translate it for you. first question is that some cargo ships dump their garbage in the high seas in order to save on cost and time of disposal. Have you noticed any advocacy and appeal in this field after, the plastic pollution campaign for the World Migratory Bird Day?
Yeah, and we weren't new to plastic pollution either. Like I mentioned, we talked with other groups who've been working on plastic pollution also, such as Ocean Conservancy. We felt like we raised awareness of the impacts of plastic pollution on migratory birds and birds in general, of course. There are organizations working on ocean dumping and plastic pollution, and it is quite a struggle. The production of plastic is big business. And when we've worked in other countries, for example, we shared the topic in Mexico, and apparently there's, the plastic companies do a lot of promotion of the importance of plastic and the number of jobs that it creates, and other aspects of plastics. Changing public sentiment about plastics is difficult but critical. Our belief that plastic is somehow cleaner. If you noticed, I don't know how it was for you, but in the United States, during the pandemic with deliveries, people wanted plastic, and a lot of cities who had a plastic ban actually relaxed their plastic ban requirements because of that. Actually, which is not true, that plastic is cleaner than, say, a paper bag. Or a reusable bag. So there's all sorts of information coming out that's very confusing to people. Some new ones are that the impacts of cotton and cotton shopping bags on the environment. So it's hard for people to make that decision. I think, I vote with Ocean Conservancy, which is to get rid of as much plastic in your house and, cut down on your material purchases, especially if they're going to end up in the landfill. Is the big recommendation. So it's hard. Mm-hmm.
How many plastic cleanup events did you have again during that campaign or that year for World Migratory Bird Day?
I don't remember, but it was hundreds, and some of them are still continuing. And the bigger impact, which we really love to see, was that communities started to work towards removing plastics from their communities. So, for example, in Ecuador, in one of the communities where we partner, they were actually able to implement a plastic ban in their community. And another community in Mexico, maybe not so much because of us, but they used the event as well. In one of the cities, they also started banning plastic straws and other plastic materials in their communities.
Wow, no, that's amazing. That's really good progress, and it kind of shows the power that this theme for World Migratory Bird Day can actually have on communities.
Yeah, and that's why we like to work at the community level, is we really feel that community-based conservation is really critical.
Well, actually, one of the stories from our partner in Changhua, because they in central Taiwan, that's actually where the migratory gray-faced buzzards go and stop a lot on their northern migration. They have an event now called Free Buzzard at Mount Bagua, but it had started actually as a count of the migratory buzzards. And actually what they did was they took the school children to the area in order to go and see how many buzzards were going there, because they knew that those were the children of the people that might have been hunting the buzzards. And so then they started out with the education, and then from that way going around, and it was successful because year after year the students gained a relationship with the buzzards, and then they didn't want their parents hurting them, and so eventually the hunting had stopped, and now it's a very large citizen science festival that they have every March in central Taiwan's Changhua. So
that's wonderful. Yeah, and hearing you talk about the goshawk chick nest, is that what you said it was? Yeah. I mean, who can shoot a baby goshawk, I mean, once you see one of those little things, it really creates a connection, right? So
absolutely. Watching them grow is really, really great. So that was a wonderful thing, especially during pandemic times, because, if you're at home, you can't really go out, you could watch the baby.
Right. Well, nest cams are really popular. I mean, here, with our bald eagle nest cams, I mean, people watch them and get really upset if something goes wrong in the nest. They get really attached to the birds.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
truly
Don't want to see them
powerful.
fledge, but they have to grow up and leave the nest sometime, right?
Right.
Okay, so the next question that we have for you, question number 2, is that in recent years, the government of Taiwan has been promoting green energy, and solar panels have caused some controversy. How can we more effectively inform the public that the location of solar panels is important and related to migratory birds? Is there any experience that you've had in terms of this in America?
So for us, some of the issues with solar panels are actually with the larger solar panel arrays, which can, if birds touch them, it can kill them. They're very hot, so the other thing is that solar panels actually do take up habitat. So solar panels placed on the ground alter the landscape. So there are a lot of impacts from solar energy, but there are also lots of benefits. And so I think that's the constant play here. I do agree. I think the question is, I do agree that we need to have good placement of solar panels. So they shouldn't just be allowed anywhere. That land habitat, if that's where they're going, might be important to some nesting bird. So putting those solar panels there might disrupt a bird, for example. I think we have the same challenge with wind energy, which is the location of turbines, and making sure that we're not placing turbines on migratory routes, or at least that those turbines are shut off during peak migration seasons. And so having the appropriate environmental review of any of these tools that benefit us in many ways, but could also be detrimental, is critical, as having that environmental review.
Yeah, it's a very tricky topic. But the one thing that the U.S. has better than Taiwan is land as well, though, because Taiwan is very, very small. So being able to find the land for these solar panels is extremely. It's a very tricky topic that now, especially, has become a very, very hot topic here. So who knows? Maybe one day a theme will be birds and green energy. Maybe.
That's a good one. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
submit that. We take suggestions.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll find the suggestion box.
Yeah.
And I will.
Yeah.
All right. So for the next question number 3. Have there been any cases of hunting activities affecting bird migration in the United States?
So migratory birds are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And the Migratory Bird Treaty Act says that there can be no what's called the take of migratory birds. And take includes anything that harms, kills, affects migratory birds. So hunting is strictly prohibited of migratory birds through the act. So the challenge is, although of course there's always illegal hunting. So from illegal hunting, perhaps, there are other locations where there are problems with hunting that affects migratory birds, say, that come from the U.S. For example, swamp hunting in some parts of the world, which is when you just go out and shoot as many shorebirds as you can. That affects species of migratory shorebirds in other parts of the Western Hemisphere. So there are places where it's a problem, where we benefit from the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which is, critical in the United States and Canada and Mexico.
But I'm not sure, because I know that there are groups though, like Ducks Unlimited and things like that, which also do some kinds of conservation work at the same time as being game hunters. Is that something that also happens in the U.S. though?
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects of the United States is the licensing of the ability to hunt. So in the United States, if you want to hunt birds or other game, you have to buy a permit. So, migratory ducks, yes, we shoot them, but you have to buy a license to shoot them. And there are permitted number of birds that you can take, and during certain seasons. And so it's regulated, it's monitored. So it's permitted only through that avenue. Because of the license and because of the love of duck hunters of ducks, and they actually do a lot of good for ducks. So Ducks Unlimited, for example, actually protects a lot of habitat for ducks. They want to see ducks survive so that their sport hunting can survive. So they've been very beneficial to duck populations. They've purchased wetlands and other places that ducks need, stopover sites, nesting sites. So they're very involved in duck conservation.
Okay, no, that's fascinating. It's very different because there is not very much hunting that goes on in Taiwan because hunting is pretty much banned in Taiwan. Guns are not very legal here, which is another topic of discussion. But okay, we're going to move on to question number 4 now because in terms of time. And so actually question number 4 comes from the students at Mincheng Elementary School. And it kind of, and so they would like to know, when birds are injured or sick, how do they heal themselves or recover?
Oh, well, that's a hard one. Not all birds do heal themselves or recover when they're injured or sick. Some may just naturally heal, but unfortunately, there aren't bird doctors out there as far as we know. So unless someone is available to help collect them or take them to a rehabilitator, if it's a serious injury, then they likely die in the wild, and that's just a natural occurrence for birds and other wildlife.
Okay, yeah, no, it is tricky because certain birds need different things in case they're injured or sick in order to heal themselves or get better, and some might need to go to a facility that could help them. Others are able to somehow heal on their own. Yeah. So it's very tricky, and I mean, especially with migratory birds, they expend so much energy in terms of their flight that for a lot of them, they just usually need to eat a lot of times in order to kind of help themselves keep on going until they're able to reach their grounds that they're searching for, if they're the breeding grounds or their wintering grounds. Yeah, which is why habitat is so important. Yeah.
Well, and if you think about it, a lot of the injuries are actually, or the ones that we know of, are caused by human interference. So, for example, we know that during migration seasons, we know that the the wildlife rehabilitators in the United States, the biggest time of year for them is migration. One of the biggest times. The other is nesting season, when young are coming out of the nest. So on migration, when birds are hitting windows, they're getting caught by cats, something else is happening to them. That's a big time for rehabilitators.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I remembered because I worked at a raptor rehabilitation center in Oregon, and basically their biggest time was nesting season, especially for barn owls. Because there were so many barn owls that would fall out, and then they got a very large clutch. So you had one mother that was taking care of, I don't know, 7 or 8 different fledglings at one time, And so it's a tricky season. Okay, so let's see now. We're gonna go to question number 5 now, which is, hold on, I'm just getting it over here.
It's an eBird question. I got that.
You're learning Chinese already.
I am. I love
it. So International Migratory Bird Day is more about education and awareness than anything else. First question. Second question, or do you also use such tools as eBird to conduct surveys of migratory birds during Migratory Bird Day?
So first of all, yes, we are out there to raise awareness of migratory birds, threats to migratory birds, and our ultimate goal is to motivate participation in conservation. So regardless of how much you know about birds, we want you to care about birds and the environment and to help to protect it. eBird we use at certain times. So like we may use it in a program or teach it to people who are ready to use it to put their lists on. We also use it, we do other programs as well. So we do research and we may use eBird as a tool in our research or put our data into eBird as well. So there are lots of different ways to use eBird. We might even just use eBird to see where birds are. So when we're providing education about World Migratory Bird Day, we may take a look at eBird and say, okay, when do birds show up at this particular site? When do they usually get there? And eBird has some great tools for looking at the phenology of bird locations over their life cycle. So you can look during fall migration or spring, you can look across the whole year and see when they're most common in a certain area. That's a valuable tool for us.
No, absolutely. And especially now because the status and trends here in Taiwan, one of the things that most of the status and trends information is for North and South America, or maybe Europe. There's not as much for Asia yet. So it's hopeful that will contribute enough information soon throughout the flyway here that it'll be possible to go ahead and know more about the status and trends of Asian birds along the EAAF. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next question, question number 6. Are there any cases of artificially providing food to migratory birds to supplement their strength during the migration? And what are the effects of providing food to migratory birds? What kind of assessment is required?
That's a good question. And yes, I don't know how it is in Taiwan, but bird feeding is a really popular hobby in the United States, Canada, and growing in other locations as well. So seed feeders, nectar feeders for hummingbirds, fruit feeders for orioles. We provide all kinds of food for different kinds of birds, even non-migratory species as well. Some people even put out mealworms for bluebirds and go to all ends to help birds. At the same time, you have to be careful about feeding. You can introduce birds to feeders and actually put them in harm's way. So, for example, the location of the feeder is critical. You don't want birds flying to the feeder and then flying into your window. You might like watching them from the window, but birds can't see windows. So you need to either make your window visible to them or place your feeder so they won't fly into your window. Cats, if you have cats that aren't kept indoors, cats are very good at learning about birds and watching feeders. And so they're quick. And the minute a bird's on the ground, your cat might be taking that bird. Hummingbird nectar feeders, and I guess that's not a problem for you, but for us, nectar feeders, it's critical to keep any feeder clean. Birds pass disease, and one of the locations that they may be passing diseases is at bird feeders where they congregate. So when there are lots of birds at a feeder, they can easily spread certain diseases. So keeping your feeder clean, making sure the seed is good. There are recommended methods for cleaning feeders depending on what it is and where you are and how hot it is. But that's important to helping migratory birds as well.
Okay.
It's a tradition, and I would say in the United States at least. I don't think you'll stop bird feeding, and it's kind of one of those ways people love to connect with birds. So there's not evidence that, for example, it affects the migration of a hummingbird. Day length has a bigger influence. They're not staying because of the food. So as far as we can tell, it's not interrupting their life cycle. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The thing is in Taiwan, because usually when you put in a bird feeder, it's in a front yard or a backyard. And many places where people live in Taiwan don't necessarily have a front yard or a backyard. So putting a bird feeder, where to put it is kind of the question. So there's not as very strong of a bird feeding culture using a feeder in that way as there is in the United States. That's very true. That's very true.
Well, and let me just say that we would always recommend providing native food and native habitat. So native plants that provide the food that birds need is first priority over a bird feeder. So flowers, any plants, that provide insects and other foods. Your yard can actually be an amazing place for birds. If you have a yard, and you're saying Taiwan doesn't, even sometimes, I've seen some quite successful little gardens on balconies and places like that the flowers attract. I saw a hummingbird attracted to a 6th floor apartment because of the flowers that they were growing there.
Oh, wow.
So, you just never know.
Probably for the hummingbird to be able to get up there.
Yeah, I don't know. It must have wanted that flower. And, of course, some of the falcons are nesting in apartment buildings and other locations. And so it's not even just about the food. It's about, the places where they need to nest and rest.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So for next question number 7, have there been any cases in the United States where migrating birds have been affected by wind turbines?
Yes, we definitely have many cases of wind turbines and impacts on migratory species. Some of the best places to put turbines can be on mountain ridges. And I think one of the older turbine areas in California proved to be in a location where raptors migrate, up on the high ridges where they catch air currents. It's been an issue about the placement of those turbines and how do we place them where they won't affect migratory birds. In terms of the scale of the impact of turbines on migratory birds, it's not as big as other factors like collisions or cats, although that might depend by species. It's actually a bigger impact on bats in the United States. But turbines do, they have a big impact. And again, it goes back to making sure that we do our environmental review and place those where they'll have the least impact.
Okay. No, it's important to put them in the appropriate places, so that way they don't harm the environment, or if they do have an impact on the environment, it's as minimal as possible. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So next question, number 8. In Taiwan poultry farms, chickens, ducks, and geese are equipped with bird repellent facilities in order to avoid contact with wild birds, so as to avoid infection with avian flu. From the perspective of bird conservation, is there any recommended way to avoid the kind of interaction between domesticated birds and wild birds?
Oh, that's an area. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. The only, bird farms I've seen that keep their birds in netted areas where other birds can't get in, For example, here, when you have any kind of caged domestic or even wild bird situation where you're raising those birds, we get other birds coming in, like great horned owls that might want to feed on them, for example. Yeah. And the only way to separate them is to keep them separated. You've got to put a barrier between them, right? Otherwise, no, there's not a way to keep some other bird from landing in there. And if you're putting food down, on a poultry farm, you're going to get other bird species in there feeding on it. So.
Yeah. It's a very tricky topic. I mean, even, here, if you have a bird cage and the bird cage is outside, maybe a sparrow might be able to still get in and take the bird feed and then escape.
Right.
So, even in that capacity. So if you have a duck farm or a chicken farm or a turkey farm, even in the US, right? It's not as easy to avoid, but it's definitely something that needs to have some kind of mitigation measures in place. Okay. Right. So for the next question, number 9, how does the U.S. deal with the issue of free-range dogs and cats hunting of wild birds?
That's a good question. That's such a good question. So with dogs, there are actually typically in a lot of places what are called leash laws, which means you're like where I live, I'm not allowed to let my dog run around free. So when I take my dog out, I have to have her on a leash. Unless it's in a place that's designated off leash, or if I'm on, say, public lands where there are areas where your dog doesn't have to be on a leash. So we have different regulations in different places where you go, but typically the larger the city, the more likely you are to not be able to allow your dog to roam free. Cats are a trickier matter, and a lot of cities are working to have cats indoors ordinances where cats are required to be kept inside or they're treated like any other animal. And in fact, I was just reading some of our neighborhoods now have what's an email group that's for your neighborhood. And I was just reading about a cat that was traveling into someone's neighborhood and causing problems. And apparently, if they cause problems according to our rules, it can be taken as a pest or an aggressive animal. But cats overall are a hard issue. We love our cats. They're harder to keep indoors. A lot of people don't believe they should be kept indoors. It's difficult to teach about the incredible number of birds that cats kill in the wild. So we have a long way to go with the cat issue, and there are a lot of groups, including us, who always in our conservation actions put keep your cats indoors. At a minimum, we ask people to at least keep them indoors during migration and nesting season, and especially as young birds are fledging, so that we can help protect them. But yes, those are the ways that we work with it now, but it's definitely not enough.
Okay. No, I mean, it's a very difficult topic here in Taiwan as well. There's, like you said, everybody loves their cats and dogs. And I mean, the cats and dogs, it's the same as in the United States, want to give them their freedom to roam because, you know, that's what they do. However, their impact on wildlife is very large, especially with birds. So, yeah.
So just to share what I have at home, because I do have 2 cats, is that we have a cage that's attached to a window. So our cats can go outside into their cage. So they're outside, but they can't roam. Yeah.
You're not on a 6th floor though, right? You're not on a 6th floor.
No. No, you're right. It's a different situation, but I have seen cages attached to the side of buildings. So, you know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. All right. And so question number 10, will the migration of birds be altered by large human construction or pollution? Have you any thoughts about this from the US?
Well, I guess by construction, I'm not sure if they mean just houses or large buildings. So going back to our theme for 2022, the theme will be light pollution, and one of the aspects of bird migration and one of the curiosities of it is that birds are actually attracted to light. So when you think about your city and a bird flying over distances and going to the places where it needs to be, they're often attracted to those areas of light. So regardless of the construction, the lights are the attraction. So that light pollution is what causes birds to sometimes go into places where they shouldn't be and where they're not going to find what they need. In addition, when the light is placed in a location where they then fly somewhere where they can be harmed, then they might fly into that structure. That could be a cell tower. It could be a home window. You may have had birds hit your own windows at your house. It could be a big office building. It doesn't really matter. And in fact, some of the studies show that it's the first 3 floors that are the most dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's very hard, but have you heard any stories about migration routes being altered because of some kind of a construction that's been placed, or anything that was an obvious change from that from somebody putting up some building or something like that? Just out of curiosity, I'm not sure.
I have not heard that. I think that the bird, the bird memory or whatever you want to call it for migration is ingrained, right? And I don't know how they change their route. And they're flying high, so an office building is not really an obstacle for a migratory bird. They can easily fly over a building. They're flying much higher than that. So that's not so much the issue.
Oh, and actually, I almost forgot. There's currently a new citizen science project in Taiwan for window collisions of birds, where people can go ahead and share the window collision, so it could collect that data to know where might be areas of particular damage to birds based on the windows that they have there, and them not being able to understand that it's a window, because because it's so densely populated area. There are many buildings, and birds are using almost the same, because a lot of where Taiwanese people live is also where the wetlands or the agricultural areas where the birds are also going in terms of their migration routes. So this is something that was within the last 2 years, and this year definitely, I know it has been fully launched. And so there's
is that the global collision map?
Oh no, this one's for Taiwan. This is a Taiwanese.
Oh, just for Taiwan. Okay, so we'll probably also be working with the global collision map, which is a global map about collisions as well. So we'll share. I'll look forward to seeing the Taiwan map or the Taiwan site.
If you want, I could share the information. I could share the
Sure.
Facebook groups with you, and you could join, follow along.
Okay, great. We will be there.
International language. Okay, now
Yes.
for the last question that we have for you today. Apart from funding, what are some of the common obstacles you encounter in your promotion efforts, and how might you handle it? So, for example, problems with the local community being unwelcoming, government regulations, language barriers, things like this.
Well, like I said, because we work with the communities, we don't typically have that I know of. I don't, unless I've missed something. We've had such an outpouring of enthusiasm for participating and being involved. And, we try to produce the materials in the languages that people need. We're one of the few organizations that produces new materials in Spanish and English every year for our Latin American partners. So it's one of the places you can get information about, any particular topic like plastics in Spanish. And because, again, we're not going into those communities and doing the program. We are working with places in those countries to do it themselves. So it's their own program. It's us providing the framework and the materials and support as much as we can, but they put on their programs. So if there's a barrier, it's only something they're having to work with.
Okay. I just see one more last question then. Okay, and very quickly, what are the most common problems faced during bird conservation? And what types of activities or events have you created to reduce garbage or plastic pollution near oceans? Thanks.
Right. Yeah. So that goes back to our plastic pollution theme, which we hosted. And again, I think it was a big awareness raising effort, which brought attention to the impact of plastics on birds rather than just marine animals. And so the activities that we create, and, we didn't create these activities. We partnered with other organizations. And again, we worked with Ocean Conservancy that year to promote plastic pollution cleanups, which groups are still doing. So we used the Ocean Conservancy data sheet, the Ocean Conservancy data portal to have and they gave us access so that we knew which groups were doing it for World Migratory Bird Day. So we had cleanups all over. We had cleanups in the Caribbean islands. We also encouraged cleanups in other locations. We had a huge cleanup where the kids walked from the Eilat Bird Sanctuary to the sea, and did a huge cleanup. It was amazing. So this was, global, and a great activity.
Okay, no, that's really wonderful. It sounds like it, and there's a lot of interest because there's more and more things going on now in terms of protecting the seas around Taiwan, and also in terms of recognizing the issues with plastic pollution as well. And those don't just affect fish or mammals, but also birds as well. And there's more and more recognition of that in Taiwan. So that's, I think, why you're getting so many of these great questions about.
Well,
this,
and the other point is that it's not just oceans, but to think about the microplastics that are also in our streams and our ponds and also in our soil. So there's concern not just about seabirds and marine animals, but also about inland organisms and how much plastics they're getting from the laundry that we run with nylon, clothing, all the microfibers that come out into our waterways, and they're finding so much microplastics in our soils as well.
Yeah, it is a big issue. We are going to have to start wrapping up here though now. I just wanted to first say thank you to Susan again so much for your talk today. It was fascinating and wonderful and really great to be able to learn what's going on, and hopefully we could connect more with your organization in the future to work together for World Migratory Bird Day, and that we all feel a bit more connected with birds than we did when we first started. So thanks for that. I would also like to remind everyone that we have another webinar coming up on this Thursday. Dr. Richard Fuller from the University of Queensland in Australia will be joining us to discuss conserving migratory shorebirds along the East Asian and Australasian Flyway. Hope you can join us for that as well. Lastly, a special thanks to the Forestry Bureau, the Taiwan Endemic Species Research Institute, our two guest speakers, Dr. Fang and Dr. Lin, our translators, Nayuka and Tracy Wong, and of course, Susan. Thank you again so much for joining us today and sharing information about this wonderful work. Oh, and also the students from Mincheng Elementary School. Bye-bye. So that's all that we have for today. So goodbye, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Have a good rest of your day, and rest good night for you. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. 谢谢大家。
谢谢。